But I found the 2004 workshop report, I don't know how you guys felt about when you were reading these, if you read them. I found it a little more detailed and a little more exciting in my point of view. One great quote, "It is important that communities themselves define and identify their own ICH, and governments, institutions, NGO representatives should be ready to assist them in doing this." So in a way, there's a bit of a primary role, secondary role there, and governments and representatives are to play the secondary role to support communities. And this is how I've read it. Perhaps you have a different interpretation. But in this workshop, they also talked about this idea of community empowerment and engagement, and that this idea of empowerment is a prerequisite to making inventories. So first, communities must be empowered. And this may entail ongoing training of community members in cultural documentation, methods, technology. And we'll be touching upon this with the Scotland case study. Creation of forums or centers for ICH expression, representation, access. So offering venues to meet and to express and to talk about things, perhaps not even about the expression, but just to come together. And this idea of bottom-up methodologies is stated within this workshop report. Pilot workshops could help, perhaps. We test, you create smaller case studies of inventorying to see, again, this idea of best practices, but seeing which ways work by just starting at smaller steps. Support communities to select their own teachers and create schools for transmission. So it's an educational role that should be also part of the process of inventorying. And the report also talked about benefits of inventory making, which I think is worth mentioning here. Obviously, by identifying intangible heritage, you are intrinsically raising awareness of it. These initiatives can become part of school projects who are involving younger members of society and communities. These inventory making programs, initiatives can utilize all forms of media. So it could be contemporary, relevant, particularly to younger people, and fun. Right? And again, we'll be touching upon this with Scotland. And it can be used for raising awareness on a national level, campaigns, etc., particularly if you have a website, for example. And also within the workshop, this idea of cultural mapping. So like we saw briefly with Scotland, you're attributing intangible cultural heritage. You're looking at the intangible cultural heritage of a territory geographically. So you're mapping where it exists, where it's expressed. You're also identifying the communities that express these expressions. Cultural mapping can be based on existing data, scholarly research that already has been done, fieldwork, etc. So let's use what we have. It's an open-ended exercise. It can change. It reflects this dynamic nature of intangible heritage. And it can also be used to assist governments in understanding what exists within their territory, and so that can help with establishing timelines, budget strategies. So it's a new frame of view of listing heritage, perhaps this mapping idea. This is what the participants were discussing. And that brings to light this recommended reading that for this talk today. Lewis and his, just briefly touch upon it, his work with communities in Cameroon, forest communities, and they're really concerned about delogging and the deforestation of their local areas. And so non-governmental representatives and governmental representatives equipped them with GPS, global positioning satellite technology, to monitor their local areas. And in order to communicate this information, it was uploaded to a website. So right there, this website, which is accessed by that upper level of government NGOs and the local level, it's a meeting place, a virtual meeting place, an interface where information, in this case about deforestation, is being shared. And so I thought that was interesting in terms of using new technologies, and I'm sure Kate will be going on more about this tomorrow. But this interface idea, this virtual meeting place, where the national level can communicate with that local level, to put it simply. And also website technology allows for up-to-date information to be exchanged, as we know from using the internet, reflects the dynamic nature of intangible heritage. This virtuality of the internet is quite similar to intangibility in a sense. And especially websites can be used, such like immediate updating websites, technology, can be used for intangible heritage that is threatened perhaps. I'm just throwing these ideas out there, and for example, that urgent list. So let's go to Vanuatu and see what's already been going on for many years. In that 2004 workshop I mentioned earlier, Regan Vanu, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, made a key point and that has already come up this past week, that the Asia-Pacific region countries have different historical backgrounds, cultural heritage situations, and views of heritage, I added that, stages of development and approaches to heritage management. So we've already been discussing, the situations are different. So therefore, approaches need to be just as diverse and different and be catered to these differences. But Regan Vanu argues that the 2003 convention is vague, but therefore flexible to reflect all these different situations. And he also says that the experts are intangible cultural heritage practitioners. So that's someone to back up that thought for you in your readings, amongst others. And he believes that involving communities, groups, and individuals in this process of inventorying and documenting intangible heritage can heighten the effectiveness of this approach, of inventories. Because you're injecting that local level knowledge and values, and perhaps you're even instilling pride and trust, and I'll get to that in a moment. Helps to raise awareness, as we've covered. And perhaps revitalize and transmit tangible cultural heritage if you're involving local level people, because that's where it is to be. That's where intangible heritage lives. So when you have that local communities, when you have local communities involved, you're heightening that chance for transmission, because they are the people who will transmit it. And so, sorry about the formatting. Regan Vanu talks about this field workers network that has already been in existence for about 2 decades, I believe, maybe perhaps 3, that is based at the Vanuatu Cultural Center. This network of field workers have been selected community members, and let me just first say that the point of his article is that this field worker program, which of course I'll talk about, has already been established, and he was thinking, well, we can use it to make the inventory. We can build upon what's already been going on. These field workers are trained in recording cultural information. They're also trained in ethnographic methodologies, cultural heritage management aims, so the idea that we need to preserve heritage, and also the methodologies to do so. And each year there's an annual workshop of these field workers, where they present their in-depth research, because they've been researching for a full year. And all these workshops have been recorded for 22 years, so that's information in itself. So you have all these field workers out in a geographical territory of Vanuatu. They meet and discuss what they have found, very similar to what we're doing. So again, it's community-based field workers, and they're helping to identify, document, and archive. So this is what they're really doing out there. There's been a big focus on languages. There are many languages in Vanuatu. And it's not just the languages, the words, it's the cultural concepts that are being conveyed through these languages, the world views and knowledge. They're also helping to map and create national database of Vanuatu's languages and cultures. So Regan Vanu thinks, oh, this can be turned into an inventory as well. They're also collecting audiovisual, and photographic information about rituals, practices, and traditional knowledge. This has already been going on. This is what they're presenting when they go to the annual meetings. And just to summarize, key points and ideas about this network. Yes, it's a network of community liaisons between the VCC, the Vanuatu Cultural Center, and communities that they're a part of. They can also be viewed as ethnographers. And I thought that the VCC recognizes their expertise and ability in identifying, recording, and eventually helping to inventory ICH in Vanuatu. So I thought there's a bit of trust that's being extended from a museological institution, in simple terms, to people, to communities. Perhaps there's a sense of pride felt on behalf of these field workers. So that idea of empowerment. And it's geographically spread. So the VCC is not only dealing with heritage within its walls, so to speak, it's outside, it's out in the communities with these liaisons and field workers. So that's really interesting. And perhaps this reduces that top-down approach that is so built into the framework and UNESCO.